All right, so further about focus about how religion played a big part to your upbringing. Did that influence you at all to pursue your vocation?
Yes. You use the word vocation. Vocation is a calling. Vocal cords, vocation. So somebody calls you. I believe I was called by God to at least try religious life. The calling is, it's a very subtle kind of thing. And you only can see it more clearly in retrospect when you look behind you. Okay? It's like a small, quiet voice, a whisper, you know? You could do this. I think you gotta follow this road. It's a very kind of subtle thing. But you don't choose your vocation. God chooses you. In the 15th chapter of John's Gospel, verse 16, verse 12, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down his life for his friends." And Jesus goes on to say, "I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last." I believe that kind of summarizes what a vocation is all about. It may look as though I chose to join the Xavierian Brothers, and that's partially true. But it's also true, and much more true, that God whispered to me, so to speak, put thoughts into my mind, attractions. I talked about the teaching attraction from Father Kelly. I talked about Brother Alon, Brother Peter Kelly, the first brother I ever met, the best brother I ever met. And that whole community at Mission High School was so welcoming for me. So I decided, much to my parents and my sister's chagrin, that I was going to try this. And I really surprised myself. I mean, when I look back on it, I said, I don't think, you might not do it the second time around. I don't know. But anyway, that's what I did. I joined. I took a train from South Station in Boston with a group of other people who were going to the initiate. Several from Walden Catholic. One, Tommy Donlin, who was a grammar school chum of mine, and he went to Mission High School and I went to BC High. But we both decided we were going to go into the Xavierian Brothers. And we hadn't decided that together. We decided that separately. So I went by train down to Baltimore, and then we got on a boat. After having supper in Baltimore, we got on a boat and went to Norfolk, Virginia. And we got off at Norfolk and were met by the novice master and the superior of the novitiate community. And we were driven to the novitiate, which was called Full Point Comfort College, now known as Sacred Heart Novitiate. It had been a school, a high school, back in the early 1900s that the brothers operated. I may have mentioned that All Point Comfort, or Point Comfort, was the site, and I didn't know this at the time, that the first African slaves arrived in the United States in 1519. I don't want to sound melodramatic, but even from the first day, I knew this is where God wanted me. I've never looked back. I've never had really any doubts that this is where I belonged. I've seen people come, try out the novitiate, and leave. 33 young men entered on September 19th, 1950. By the time it was time to take first vows, we were down to 21. So some came, stayed a few days, and said, this isn't for me. But I don't know, I felt so at home. I didn't know anybody, but I felt so at home and so welcome. The novice master, Brother Kevin, was wonderful. The superior of the house, Brother Nathan, who was a principal at St. John's in the 30s and 40s, and was a teacher here when I first began to teach in the 1950s. He was just wonderful, too. And we had another brother, Brother Oswald, who was our postulate master. Now, let me explain to you what a postulate is. A postulate is one who comes and tries, before entering the novitiate, tries the life for 6 months. So from September 19th to March 19th of 1951, we had this period where we learned something about religious life. We learned something about the Xavierian Brothers, the history of the Xavierian Brothers, because there are a lot of kids that went to Xavierian Brother school, schools that really didn't know they could street. They knew certain brothers, but they didn't know they could street the rows. So that was what Brother Oswald instructed us in. And then the 19th of September, 1951, we pronounced vows. I can't remember just how many people, but it was under 20 that pronounced first vows. And so from March 19th, 1951 to September of 1953, we were in the novitiate in Virginia. In September of 1953, September 52, I guess it was, we moved as novices to our, what we call scholasticate, our school. We operated a junior college called Xavierian College, located in Silver Spring, Maryland. We started that college in the early 1930s. It was mainly to educate our own brothers, but after a while, other religious orders, really small religious orders, sent their novices and their scholastics to the college. So when I got there, I spent the first semester of my freshman year in college at Silver Spring, Maryland, at Xavierian College. Then in January 19th, we went back to the novitiate. I was still a novice. I went back to the novitiate in Virginia, prepared for 2 months to take the vows, and then pronounce vows on March 19th, 1950 to what, 3. I have to get the exact date. But anyway, and then returned to college and spent the next 3.5 years studying at our college through the sophomore year. At the end of the sophomore year, we moved to Catholic University. It took our 3rd and 4th years in Washington, D.C., the Catholic University of America. And I majored in United States history. So I took other courses that were connected with history. I took several college geography courses, political science courses, sociology courses, Latin American history, that was my minor. And so I was preparing myself to go out, as we say, on the missions to my first assignment. I loved my 4 years of college. They were just wonderful years. Lots of study, but there were all kinds of people that that help one another. The most important thing I learned about the Xavierian Brothers was community and friendship. Okay? You have to, the text says you have to lay down your life for your friends. That means nobody can be a brother or a priest who wants to get married. You know, you might want to, but if you want to, you're not going to be accepted into it. That's the rule of the church, you know. And there's some pretty good reasons for that, although I'm quite open to the idea of a married priest. But I had the freedom to move around. If I had a wife and children, they might not like to move every so often to Maryland or England or Kenya, you know. But I could do that because but the most important thing is the word brother. We call it the Xavierian Brothers. And that's what we are. We're brothers to one another. That's the most important thing. Community, prayer life is the most important thing. What we do as a ministry is important, but not as important as our prayer life, our worship of God, and our living together as brothers in a community. Okay, let me say one last thing. When living together as brothers in community, we are not carbon copies of one another. We all have different personalities, backgrounds, you know. So you learn to love one another. You learn to accept one's differences, as people will accept my differences. So that was the preparation. During the recreation time, I think I mentioned that I took up refereeing basketball games. We had a league composed of various religious orders that sent their candidates, their scholastics, to Catholic universities. So the Paulists had a team, the Augustinians had a team, the Holy Cross Fathers had a team, the Christian Brothers had a team. It was a league. And probably some of the most fiercely contested games were run among people who were vowing to follow Christ. But that didn't preclude them from pushing, shoving, elbowing, trying to get a basket, you know. But it was all good fun. It was all good fun. The competition was keen, but in the end, it was all good fun. So that's mainly what I did. I spent most of my time studying, okay? Which led to my first assignment. But before I got to St. John's, I went to Camp Calvin, which is located in Maryland, Leonardtown, Maryland, southern part of Maryland. We had a boys' camp that we operated for a number of years. And I spent 8 weeks there in a cabin with another brother, and I forget how many boys were in the cabin, but they were probably 7, 8, 9 years old. And that was for 8 weeks. Well, that was giving me a little experience with dealing with young people, you know. Before I set foot at St. John's with freshmen, I had younger people to deal with. But that was a lot of fun. And so on August 15th of 1956, we had the reading of the assignments at Camp Calvin. And they would say, St. John's High School, Worcester, cross off Brother so-and-so and Brother so-and-so and add Brother Antonius and Brother Kelly. So I ought to explain to you why I said Brother Antonius. When I was in the novitiate, we were all given new names, names of saints. And we gave up our old identity for a new identity. St. Peter was called Cephas, and Jesus changed his name to Peter, or Simon Peter. Anyway, that was a tradition in the religious life, not just the Xavierian Brothers, Dominican Fathers, so many other groups, the Christian Brothers. So I was given the name. I didn't choose it. It was chosen for me. I have not chosen you, you have chosen me. The same thing worked with the name. So I was given the name of Brother Antonius, which was a mouthful. Let me explain what that word means. It means little Anthony. So Anton is Anthony, okay? And the INUS is a diminutive. In other words, it means little Anthony. So if you say Marcel, and you put INU, it becomes Marcellinus, okay? Little Marcel. Now, although I was 6'2.5" at the time, and little Anthony, the little part of Anthony, of Antonius, didn't fit. That's the name I was given. And what a wonderful name. I pray to St. Antoninus every night. He was a Dominican friar. He was the Archbishop of Florence, Italy. And he lived in the 15th century. He was dedicated to the poor of Florence. He owned practically nothing. If somebody gave him stuff, he gave it away. He was also a moral theologian. And so I was kind of proud of that. And then I found out that our former deceased now, a Supreme Court judge, Antonin Scalia, was little Anthony without the U.S. on Antonin. And then Antonin Dvorak was a very famous composer of music, okay? So that there are other people whose names were Antoninus, okay, or variations of. So I bore that name as I came to St. John's in 1956. So when I got here, I was known as Brother Antoninus, as I said. It was a mouthful. The kids were able to easily say to Brother Neil, he was here, and Brother Lionel, I wasn't too hard. Brother Chad, he was the principal. Brother Ricardo, I wasn't too bad. But Brother Antonius was a bit much for some people, because many kids got it right away. I tried to explain it. But the school janitor couldn't understand who I was at all. And so instead of calling me Brother Antonius, he called me Brother Antremine, which was the syrup you put on pancakes, the pancake mix of the syrup. And then somebody else called me Brother Antonius and said, "Thank be to God, we now have a Lithuanian brother on the faculty at St. John's." I thought they were all Irishmen, but we now have a Lithuanian. I guess Antonius is a Lithuanian name. So I didn't get kicked out of that joke. We had 2 Dodge station wagons, and we put 6 brothers in one station wagon and 6 in the other. We didn't have bucket seats in those days, so you could fit actually 3 people up front if you squeezed them in. 3 in the middle, and there was a back seat that went out of the traffic behind. And so there were 2 seats there. And so I, being the youngest, rode shotgun, as we say, looking at the traffic behind the car. And that's how we got to St. John's down to Temple Street. When it snowed, we didn't have any plows. We didn't have any money to get plows. So it was plowing by hand, shuttles. And thank God there were at least 5 guys who were in their 20s or early 30s were able to shovel the snow from the door here to the road. The man across the street, Mr. Phillips, used to come and help us out. His son, Richie Phillips, was a freshman at St. John's, and Richie was always a great pal of mine. He died 2 years ago, and I miss seeing him. But he used to walk over here in his 70s, walking around in the evening. We had Mass here every day except Sundays. Every day we had Mass in the chapel, which is the sun porch. And priests from St. Mary's used to come and say Mass, alternating the pastor and the curate. And the same thing is true of St. Anne's, although the pastor didn't come, really, the curate from St. Anne's Day. But they alternated. But on Sundays, we had to get down to St. Mary's. And we all look forward to going to St. Mary's, because the 2 priests at St. Mary's, they were just absolutely wonderful. Father Ed Lynch, he was the pastor. Now, this is 1956. And the young curate, his name was Father Bernie Gilgun, who was a diocesan priest. He had started out as an Augustinian, but transferred to the diocese. Bishop Wright brought it into the diocese. And he was just a newly ordained priest, a couple of years. But Father Bernie Gilgun was an absolutely marvelous priest. He gave the best sermons you could ever hear, and he did it in 7 minutes. Not only did he appeal to your mind, he aimed straight for your heart, and his heart and your heart were connected. And this is not just my opinion. It's the opinion of the brothers. It's the opinion of the parishioners at St. Mary's. He was just great. He was a big influence in my life, although he did not know it at the time. As I say, I was captivated by his love of God, his ability to preach, to teach. In 1956 and 1957, he was in the middle of the church, and his Father Lynch was saying Mass, and aside for him, he was in the middle aisle, urging people to sing. Don't be afraid to sing. Sing loudly. You're in God's house. Sing as though you were in a bottle. Sing. Let God be your voice. He was just absolutely wonderful. He was just. This is before Pope John the 23rd called the Vatican Council. This was before Vatican Council. He had the church popping. And every couple of weeks, he conducted, for anybody who wanted to experience it, what he called clarification of thought. In other words, parishioners were invited, if they wanted to come, on a Friday night to talk about the church. And he would sometimes talk about a book he had just read. He was a very learned person, too. A very down-to-earth, practical, learned person. So he inspired me. But I decided I no longer going to pursue a career in U.S. history. I am going to go into theology. One of the things that I learned from Bernie Gilgun was who Dorothy Day was. Dorothy Day was the co-founder of what we call the Catholic Work. It's a movement started by Dorothy and a French peasant who once was a Christian brother by the name of Peter Warren. And they started this in New York City in 1933, in the depths of the Depression. They started a soup kitchen in Manhattan, and they also started a newspaper called The Catholic Worker, selling for a penny a card. And if you get The Catholic Worker today, 2022, it's still a penny a card. If you want to get a year's subscription, it's a quarter. Now, isn't that a bug in today's inflation? Sure is. And so he inspired me to study for my master's degree, theology. And then I became very much interested in Dorothy Day, the Catholic worker movement. And we do have two Catholic worker houses in Worcester. And one of them, I brought this. One of them is called the St. Francis and St. Therese Catholic Worker. It's run on at 52 Mason Street in Worcester, off Chandler Street. And it's been run for years by a couple, Claire and Scott Schaefer Duffy. Scott is a graduate of Holy Cross. And they have been taking care of homeless people for years. The other one is the Mustard Seed. And the Mustard Seed is located on Piedmont Street in Worcester, and it serves meals to homeless people or people who just can't afford food every day. And that's run by White Boover. And wouldn't you know that this weekend we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Mustard Seed. And Bertie Gill Gunn, my hero, the one who changed the course of my educational life, was the chaplain of the Mustard Seed for years before he died. And it's interesting that at the conference up at Holy Cross, I spent the weekend at Holy Cross, I met Dorothy Day's granddaughter, Martha Hennessy, and had a wonderful chat with her. And I also met two graduates of St. John's High School from Shrewsbury, Steve Moran, class of 1964, and Rich Bishop, the class of 1970. Rich runs the Catholic Worker Farm out in Montana. They had steers. They had, so it was a delight, a surprise and a delight to meet two graduates of St. John's who had been longtime Catholic workers. One of the things I probably should mention, in 1958, when I was teaching at St. John's, I wrote a book. I co-authored a book called by this racist title, which I didn't invent, the publisher did, Friar Among the Savages, I think. And it was published in 1958. It's described as a series for readers between 9 to the teens. So it was a series of books put out by a publisher called Xavierian Brothers on Catholic heroes of the past. So I was asked by one of our brothers, my senior year in college, to co-author the book for this series. The other brother, Brother Kurt, really Ed Bozo, and I sat down and wrote the book. I was the historian. I tried to get all the historical information about the person I was writing about, and Ed did the literary. I wrote some of it, but Ed was the real English major. So we wrote the book, and it came out in 1958. And you could see I was kind of a young guy in those days, the two of us. And now that was kind of nice. But the Worcester Telegram and Gazette came out and took a picture, wrote a little article. The Catholic Free Press did the same thing. And so the boys bought the book. I wasn't selling it. They had to get it from the bookstore. But that was kind of interesting. But the subject matter of the book was a Dominican priest by the name of Father Louis Cancer, C-A-N-C-E-R. He was a Dominican friar who was very successful in converting the Guatemalan Indians to Christianity. But the way he did it was by very non-violent means. He was very gentle, persuaded people if they didn't want to convert to Christianity, that was fine with him. And so, but he was very, very good. He was so good that the Dominicans said, "We want you to go to Florida and do the same thing with the Florida Indians." So he accepted that assignment, and he went to Florida, but he had been preceded by some of the conquistadores, De Soto being one of them, and they brutalized the Indians. So when he got there and tried to talk about Christianity, their idea of Christianity was to sublimate and these brutal people that were trying to subjugate them. So he was not very successful. In fact, he tried his gentle, non-violent means, and it didn't bear fruit. He was clung to death on the shore of the Gulf of Mexico, of Florida, by the Indians. And the people that came with him, brought it by ship, wrote in the harbor urging him to take a rowboat out to the big ship. And he said, "No, my mission was to the Indians. I'm going to stick with the Indians." I should call them the Native Americans. But Indians is bad enough. Calling them savages is, but I didn't choose the guide. In 1958, we didn't have any sensitivity, I guess, to Native Americans. And referring to the savages is horrifying to me. It happened to that. But 1958, I say it was a horrifying. Lesson is, we learn by making horrible mistakes, I guess. Most horrible mistakes is not learned by the mistakes.
I'm Joe Carpenter, class of 2023.
And I'm Nolan Pace, class of 2024.
And on behalf of the St. John's Network, thank you for watching our interview with Brother Paul. We'd like to thank him for lending us some of his time to share with us his life story.
Additionally, we'd like to thank Brother Paul for giving us some insight into the history of St. John's and the communities built both in the student body and in the Xavierian Brothers. On behalf of everyone involved in this production, we would like to extend a special thank you to Kevin Kwasny for his efforts in directing, producing, and filming this project.
Once again, thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed this St. John's Network production.